The tallest building in the world is the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. It soars 2,700 feet into the sky. That's literally more than half a mile straight up. And it's supported by numerous 4-foot wide diameter concrete pylons driven over 16 stories deep into the ground. It's an amazing structure. It was completed in 2010 at the cost of $1.5 billion. And it's widely considered one of the most amazing buildings in all the world. Yet I believe there's a more amazing construction project whose designer and maker is God. It's called the Bible. In fact, it's the most influential piece of literature in all of human history. And in a more convincing way, I believe the Bible reaches far higher into the sky of human history than the Burj Khalifa ever will. Yet in a similar way, in order for a building or a book to have maximum impact, ultimately the structure must be extremely strong. So let's briefly look at two characteristics regarding the extraordinary structure of the Bible: the symmetry in its arrangement and the specialness of its message. These two structural elements contribute to the overall design in making the Bible a book like no other. Let me start with a question. Why is symmetry so important? Well, according to a recent article in Psychology Today, researchers have confirmed that we rate faces that are more symmetrical as more attractive than those with less symmetry. Like all vertebrates, humans have what's called bilateral symmetry, and for the most part, our right side develops as a mirror image of our left side. To put it simply, as humans, we like to look at things that are balanced and orderly and appear healthy. Well, is it any wonder then that our Creator, who designed us like this, also designed His written word in a very symmetrical way? In a sense, it's a way for Him to grab our attention and to get us to check it out. And when we do, we discover His word indeed is a beautiful thing. Now, as you may already know, the Bible is comprised of 66 books in total. 39 books are called the Old Testament, and 27 books are called the New Testament. Yet did you know the way in which these books are laid out within each testament is quite surprising to many people? It is, and let me show you what I mean. Let's start with the structure of the 39 books of the Old Testament. And to keep it easy to remember, just think 17, 5, and 17. That's it. 17, 5, and 17. Now let me tell you what that means. Basically, the Old Testament is comprised of three main parts. Part 1 is the history section, and that's 17 books. Part 2 is the poetry section, and that's 5 books. Finally, Part 3 is the prophetic section, and that's the final 17 books of the Old Testament. And so there you have it, 17, 5, and 17. But I have to tell you, it does get a bit more interesting at this point, because inside the 17 books of the history and prophetic sections, we can break it down into 5 and 12 books respectively. And 5 plus 12, of course, is 17. Allow me to show you what I mean. Let's begin in the first section of the Old Testament. Remember its name? It's called the history section. Right. And the first 5 books of the history section are books you probably already know the names of: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These 5 books together are called the Pentateuch. They're also known as the Book of the Law. These first 5 books contain the law of God as given to Moses and provides us a detailed account of the history of man, including the very beginning of God's plan of salvation that we all understand today. In fact, when Jesus referred to what was written in the law and the prophets, He literally was referring in part to these 5 books called the Pentateuch. Now, immediately following the Pentateuch is 12 books of additional history, and these books give a detailed account of the nation of Israel entering into the promised land with Joshua sometime around 1300 BC, and end up with the time of Esther sometime around 500 BC. And so that makes up the history section of the Old Testament. Next, we have what's called the poetry section. And these 5 books are also referred to as wisdom literature. And that's probably actually a better description of what these books are all about. They are considered poetry, but not really the kind of poetry with words that rhyme. You know, roses are red and violets are blue. That's not really the way this poetry works. This is more of a rhyme of thought. And the second section of the Old Testament begins with the book of Job and concludes with the Song of Solomon, or sometimes called the Song of Songs. Now, the third section of the Old Testament, this is called the prophetic section, and it actually mirrors the history section. It totals 17 books, but also can be broken down into 5 major prophets and 12 minor prophets. In fact, some people ask me why they labeled major and minor prophets. Well, the major prophets aren't major because they are more important. There's actually a much more practical reason than that. It's just simply they're long books. In fact, each one of them require their own scroll. Then, followed by a single scroll, the following 12 prophets were recorded, and they now are referred to as the minor prophets. So, this is how your Old Testament is laid out. And here's the symmetry. Section 1 is the history section, and that's 17 books. Section 2 is the poetry section, and that's 5 books. And section 3 is the prophetic section, and that's 17 books. So altogether, this accounts for all 39 books of the Old Testament. Now, let me show you the New Testament because I believe it's just as remarkable and it's just as memorable. In fact, all you have to do to remember the New Testament is remember 999. That's it. 999 adds up to 27 books for the New Testament. And here's how the symmetry of the New Testament is laid out. The first 5 books are, again, history books. These are the history books of the New Testament. They are the 4 Gospels and the book of Acts. In fact, most of the history of the New Testament falls into the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts. In fact, if the New Testament were, let's say, a house, you would enter into the New Testament as you come up the 5 steps of the history books. And then over here on your left would be the letters to the churches. There are 9 letters to the churches. And let me tell you how you can always tell if it's a letter to a specific church. It ends in 3 letters, A, N, S. All the letters to the churches from Romans to Thessalonians all end in A and S. These letters were written to specific cities and have to do with specific issues Paul was addressing to these congregations. And now entering the house of the New Testament, across the top of the door header are 4 letters that happen to all be addressed to the specific individuals. And they bear the names of those individuals that they're written to. 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, and Philemon. And then over here on the right side of the house are 9 letters. These are called the general letters. And the first one was generally written to all the Hebrews. We're not sure who the author of the book of Hebrews is. Many think it might be Paul. Some think it could be Barnabas. But the important part of the book shows how Christ is the fulfillment of everything in the law and the prophets back in the Old Testament. Now, the rest of these 9 general letters, these 9 books, for the most part, are named pretty much after their authors. 1st and 2nd Peter, James, 1st and 2nd, 3rd John, and Jude. The last one is titled Revelation. Now, Revelation is a bit different. Revelation is an apocalyptic book. Apocalypse just really means that which is coming at the end of the world. But here's the symmetry. 5 steps coming up into your home, 9 letters to the churches, 4 letters to people, and then 9 letters or general letters. So here you see the symmetry. 9, 9, and 9. Now, what's most interesting about the Bible is not only its symmetry in structure, but also the specialness of its message. In fact, the message of the Bible speaks to the heart of mankind in a way very unique to itself. And this reinforces the structure of the Bible, I believe, in a very practical and personal way. You see, embedded within the pages of the Old Testament is a promise to those in the future, including us. In a reference to the Messiah in Isaiah 49:6, it tells us that Jesus would be a light to all nations, and salvation would reach to the ends of the earth. And we shouldn't be surprised by this because starting with the book of Genesis, we see a complete cycle of revelation, separation, and reconciliation. It's kind of like a straight line. God's message of reconciliation is rooted within the pages of Scripture. In fact, the very root word of the word Torah, which refers to the Pentateuch, actually means to shoot like an arrow. And it carries this idea of pointing someone in the right direction. We can, as you will, see the arc of salvation beginning with creation itself and reaching to the very end of time throughout the pages of the Bible. In fact, the Old Testament contains one complete and single covenant between God and the people of Israel. The New Testament builds on that covenant and opens up this special covenant with God to all humanity. God is no longer out there or only for one nation or in a tabernacle or behind a curtain. God is now in us. He is in here, available to all nations, all tribes, and all tongues. And within this new covenant, the promise to Abraham all the way back in Genesis 12:3 is fulfilled. In you, Abraham, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, a final distinction regarding the Old Testament is that it finishes with a hope of pointing towards a future event. In fact, Malachi, who happens to be the last prophet and the last book of the Old Testament, writes this as his concluding verse. I, meaning God, will send you the prophet Elijah before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes, and he will turn the hearts of parents to their children and the hearts of children to their parents, so that I will not come and strike the land with a curse. It's literally as if the Old Testament seems unfinished, like it's looking forward to something else. Well, we know what that something else is, and because of the New Testament, we now have captured the beginning of this concluding prophecy. Lastly, the Bible's closing picture of the new heaven and the new earth in Revelation 21 is actually the perfect ending. And so there you have it, the symmetry in its arrangement and the specialness of its message. These two structural elements contribute to the overall design in making the Bible like no other book the world has ever seen.